Hi, good morning. Welcome back to That Saturday Show. We're back in the studio. Been gone for about 3 or 4 months. Sorry, not months. Three or 4 weeks. The Peace Center was closed over the holidays, and the studio was closed for remodeling. So I'm looking at brand new state-of-the-art cameras in front of us. So good on the studio, good on the city. This is our last episode of our second season. Because we did start on January the 6th, the Insurrection Day, a day of infamy. So we'll be starting season 3 next week. And what we have planned right now for this week and next week, we're addressing some very important bills and actions coming up in this year's 60-day New Mexico state legislative session in Santa Fe that begins January 17th. So I'm here with first with Andres Valdez, the Executive Director of Vecinos United. Hi, Andres. How are you?
How are you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Cool. Yeah, it's good to be back in the studio. Good to have you back. And how you been doing? And how were your holidays?
Holidays were great. They were a little too long, but I'm always ready to get back into action. So maybe that's.
Okay, so and what Andreas and I are going to be talking about in just a few seconds is police reform, police murders, police brutality, the state of our our incoming New Mexico Attorney General, our newly appointed Bernalillo County District Attorney, a number of different police issues and possible legislation that may be coming up in the 60-day session. Also, after that, we'll be having a terribly interesting interview with Arthur Furstenberg, who's the author of the best-selling The Invisible Rainbow. Arthur is very anti-worldwide wireless technology and how it affects and very concerned about how it affects the human brain and the environment. Arthur, he is working with New Energy Economy. You know, we've had Mariel Nanazi on the show before. They work very hard to stop Avangrid from taking over PNM. And I think what PNM and other people have been trying to do for about 20 years is to, for the last 6 to 4 years, is to install smart meters in everybody's home in Albuquerque. And he's very wary and is very worried about the health effects, both the humans and the environment. So that'll be a terribly interesting interview. And after Arthur, I'll be interviewing Kathleen Burke, who we've had on the show before. Andreas and I have worked with her on the Southeast Area Community Policing Council. And she works with Arthur, and she also works with fair districting or fair redistricting in New Mexico. So she'll be talking about how legislative districts are cut up and the importance and how to avoid voter suppression in the state and other issues that she's working with. So you know that the, and what we're going to be doing in this show, next show, is we're going to be having, showing the pertinent websites you can go to and the legislative hotline numbers in Santa Fe where you can call up your state reps and state senators to get involved with all the very important bills that are happening in this session. So quickly, some Peace Center news. We're back open. Our free food distribution, of course, always takes place every Saturday at 9 a.m. in our parking lot at 202 Harvard Southeast. The Peace Cafe is opening again this week and continuing on with great free food, organic food, conversation, jam sessions, coffee and tea. So, and it's there from 10 in the morning until 3 p.m. So stop by, check it out, and hang out with us and get a free meal. So, of course, that Saturday show is brought to you by the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice, where we strive to create a world without war, try to save the planet for human habitation, and stand for equality for all. So, Andreas, let's try to get into this right away. As I was hinting before, Governor Grisham has just appointed the defense attorney Sam Bregman as the temporary Bernalillo County District Attorney. And I guess he serves for 2 years until the term is over or something. But we've seen, following police reform and police action, that Sam Bregman has represented some of the worst in this state, like Dominguez and Sandy, who obviously in front of the world executed James Boyd. He defended the deputies in Las Cruces with that shooting there that was all caught on lapel cam. He defended the guards at MDC that killed Vincent, and now from his position, our new Attorney General is now Raul Torres, who takes over for Hector Balderas, and Raul Torres we've seen hasn't really come through with it for us in a number of situations. I'm worried, for instance, that Sam Bregman is going to try to make the Stephen Baca case go away. Stephen Baca, who shot Scott Williams 3 times in the back at the protest. Andres, how are you viewing all this right now?
I'm really unfortunately shocked by the way Michelle Lujan Grisham operates. I can't believe she picked the worst of the worst. I mean, they had some pretty bad candidates in there vying for district attorney, but I mean, can't they pick anybody else better? I mean,
well,
he's really.
You've almost indicated on past programs with your talks with legislators and other people that they're scared to death of the state police and the cops in general in this state.
Yeah, big problem is district attorney has a big responsibility of prosecuting police officers that commit crimes, and that regarding police shootings, excessive use of force has not happened, and there's basically an inherent conflict of interest of district attorneys and attorney generals doing that. The Elisa Lucero case is a primary example of that. But yes, it's a horrible decision by Michelle Lujan Grisham regarding the appointment of Sam Bregman. And so that sets us to wonder, what is she thinking? Who are these people that were electing into office? It's and I'm a staunch Democrat. I can't believe the Democrats elected Raul Torres as Attorney General. Obviously, they don't know that he had basically publicly admitted, I have the newspaper article right here in front of me, admitted that he has too close of a working relationship with law enforcement to actually impartially look at police cases. And he said that as district attorney, now he's the Attorney General. He's the top dog of the state, so now we can bet that police officers are not going to be prosecuted. In fact, it was a strange situation that happened between Raul Torres as DA and the Attorney General, Hector Balderas, who he's no longer Attorney General, but it was almost like a lateral pass where Raul Torres didn't want to prosecute the officers who shot Elisa 21 times. And so he passed it over to Hector Balderas. Hector Balderas sat on it till the end of his term and then decided that after an extensive investigation, there wasn't enough evidence for a successful prosecution, which is really a bunch of baloney. It's a complete cover-up. We've filed an ethics complaint, and myself and Tom Dent are part of that, and it's a complaint alleging basically a cover-up and accusing both Hector Balderas, the outgoing Attorney General, and the new incoming Attorney General, Raul Torres, of participating in this cover-up regarding this girl getting shot 21 times. Some of the questions we ask on here is like, how many times was she shot before she went down? We know it didn't take 21 bullets to bring her down. After she went down, every bullet pumped into her. Why wasn't that considered murder? These are things we're hoping the state ethics commission can hopefully bring out and that we can come and find out what the heck's going on. It really just seems like a cover-up. We expect they're not going to be able to explain what the questions we're asking.
And you guys probably just heard on the news that Valdez, as he was leaving, supposedly drops this bombshell saying that, yes, APD is totally guilty for the death of 15-year-old Brett Rosenau. And so is he going to talk to Raul? Is Raul going to have APD responsible, taken to task for Brett's murder? And we've seen plenty of other police killings, questionable killings. You've got the corrupt police union. You've got attorneys that have been involved with murders that are arguing cases in front of the New Mexico Supreme Court. So there's a lot of corruption we need to cut through and stand up to.
It's a big mess. There's corruption all the way from top to bottom. In fact, some of the legislators that we rely on to try to get legislation passed that's somewhat progressive are shaken up. They're actually afraid of the police law enforcement lobby. And for example, I'm just going to say this, our friend Senator Jerry Ortiz-Pino, when I asked him if he would sign this complaint, he said that he would not, because he has to work with Raul Torres at the state legislature. And I'm assuming, and I will find out, how many legislators feel that way. If that's the case, basically, they are condoning the behavior of letting murder occur, and they're condoning it. They're looking the other way. Oh, because they have to work with this guy. They're saying, they really should say, give him credit where credit is due for the good things he's done, if any, but hold him accountable for the things that he hasn't done. So they should be able to say, we're going to work with you on good things and hold you accountable on that. So I'm really surprised, and I anticipate that's going to be the general attitude of legislators now that we try to get some progressive legislation passed.
Well, is there direct police reform legislation being considered right now?
Thank you for asking. As a matter of fact, the big problem in police reform was that glitch where district attorneys, attorney generals have an inherent conflict of interest in prosecuting officers. So the solution, obviously, and strangely enough, Michelle Lujan Grisham proposed this when she was Congresswoman. Now she won't do anything about it as governor, not that she actually has the power. But the solution is independent investigators, independent prosecutors, that they bring these cases before the public, a judge in a public preliminary hearing where the whole public can see what's going on. That eliminates the whole problem of the lack of transparency, because we don't know what these guys are doing. We don't trust anymore what they're doing, so transparency is crucial. These cases should be brought before a judge in a public court with independent investigators, so that DAs and AGs have their fingers removed from these cases as much as possible.
Well, so back to Elisa Lucero's case. Is it by his final statements that it seems they're trying to drop this case, or can Raul pick this up?
He's once they make a determination that they're not going to further pursue a case, basically what happens then is the case becomes adjudicated. So that means that they've made a final determination on this case, and Raul Torres will take advantage of the fact.
So there's no way that the incoming Sheriff John Allen can bring this case back up to light and review it again?
I think he can shame them into it. I don't think they're not obligated at all to take the case. I can almost hear District Attorney, now Attorney General Raul Torres saying, the case has been adjudicated. I have nothing more further to say, something of that sort. But yes, he wanted it out of his hands to begin with. He got it out of his hands. Now that it's been adjudicated, it's a done deal for him. He doesn't have to deal with it. And the only thing that can make him bring this case up is to shame him into it. It would be great if John Allen had the spine. Let's see how he is to actually do it.
Well, do you think there's any hope with Keller and Medina's new initiative, or speaking of murdering police officers, but anyway, they were saying there's, so much crime out there, there's so many felons that have been released into the system. If you arrest the majority of them, crime will go way down, but then there's always the revolving door. The same thing with getting police officers off is like all these different technicalities and lowered sentences, just put these people right back in the street.
Anything having to do with Tim Keller and Chief Medina, really basically is administrative.
Right.
So
And it's all also lame duck because the next mayoral election is next year.
That's right, and so basically we're really dissatisfied with how Tim Keller has performed regarding police reform. He's basically been the smiling mayor that lets these things go on underneath, and using the DOJ consent decree as an excuse to say that things really are changing when in fact they're not. It was very interesting.
There's a lot of information that was admitted that's been backed up in internal investigations and records that the police won't even let the Citizen Police Oversight Agency see.
There's much to be done regarding. There's actually 3 levels of police oversight, and that's the criminal aspect of what officers do, which is murder or beat the holy hell out of people unjustly. And the other one is administrative, where Tim Keller and Medina can actually, well, the most they can do is fire officers, but hold them accountable. And the civilian police agency, or CPOA is what it's called now, right? There needs to be a whole assessment done as to what condition police accountability is at the mayor's level. I mean, it seems like if there's total, like almost anarchy, like chaos regarding this, the community policing councils.
Well, it's like when you and I both got on the community policing councils, we'd ask all these officers and attorneys and judges all these questions, and these guys were shuffled around from one district to another. And oh yeah, I've been in the department for 3 years, so I don't know what happened before that. All this type of shuffling.
Yeah, it almost sounds like a magic wand. They're going to try to make it go in. They're going to make everybody believe that actual reform is taking place when it's not, and it's almost like smoking mirrors. I think that's the.
Well, remember, we're going to be showing those numbers and some websites coming up. We'll be showing the number for the New Mexico State Legislative Hotline. So definitely keep that in mind. There's other issues coming up. There's important issues about keeping funding going for mortgages and rents. I believe a big chunk of that federal aid is going to start to dry up in the next month or so. There's the Blue Hydrogen Initiative. There's a number of different environmental issues. I'm sure there should be some pushback legislation against all this nuclear development, plutonium pits at Los Alamos, and all this nuclear waste that they're trying to bring in from around the country to New Mexico. It should be a very active session. I've been up there a couple of times. I know Andres has been up there. It's an interesting process. It's quite an experience to be up in the roundhouse. So here's hoping for the best in the 60-day session, and now we're going to do the Zoom I did with Arthur Furstenberg, and like I was indicating before, he is so tries to stay away from wireless so much that he barely wanted. He did the interview on a landline, and he's staying away from computers. When he was in New York, he just decided that he's not going to go anywhere where there's heavy-duty wireless electronic communication. It comes from satellites. I mean, we're already living in it here. There's tons with Los Alamos and the 3 major Air Force bases and Sandia Labs and all this electronic communication out here. And Right now, they're tearing up Albuquerque to put in big old fiber optic cables. So it's going to be everywhere. So thanks for being with us, Andres, and we'll need to get you back real soon.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, welcome back to That Saturday Show. I'm your host, Tom Dent. I'm here with author and activist Arthur Furstenberg. Arthur is based in Santa Fe. Arthur has been an activist against the proliferation of electromagnetic waves, heightened cell phone technology, and how wireless can very, very seriously affect public health and the environment. Arthur's originally from New York. He's based in Santa Fe. He is the author of The Invisible Rainbow, which has very excellent peer reviews from scientists and PhDs around the world. This is a very serious issue about public health, the environment, and brainwaves. Arthur is leading a campaign with other groups against smart meters that that PNM, or the public utility of New Mexico, has been planning to install for the last 4 to 6 years. These replace your regular electric meters. They're remote. They send out wireless signals. They say with the FCC that it's supposed to be very harmless, like baby monitors, but Arthur's studies and other people's studies have shown that this can be pretty dangerous to the public health. And so Arthur, thanks for being on That Saturday Show. Please introduce yourself, and also the PNM is trying to run this through the Public Regulation Commission, which has actually changed last year because of a referendum on the ballot where voters, I don't know if they knew what they were doing, but they allowed the governor now to appoint commissioners across the state, as opposed to when we used to elect them, the voters elected them prior to this year. So this could set up a very biased thing where special interests could run things like smart meters and other things through our utilities. So Arthur, welcome to the program. Please continue to introduce yourself and let us know exactly what's going on here.
Thank you very much. I am the president of an organization called New Mexicans for Utility Safety. We formed in 2016 to oppose smart meters in New Mexico. We intervened in PNM's application and we helped to defeat it. The result is that today New Mexico is one of the last 2 states in the United States where the investor-owned electric utility does not have smart meters, and we want to keep it that way. PNM has recently reapplied for smart meters, and we have filed a motion to intervene in this proceeding also. Why are we opposed to smart meters? Because they are devastating to health and the environment. The best way I know to convey this is to read from people's stories. Hundreds of people have submitted public comments in this proceeding to the PRC, the Public Regulation Commission. Many of them described what happened to them and their families and their neighbors and their pets and the birds and the animals in their yards after smart meters were installed. Most of these comments come from outside of New Mexico because most New Mexicans do not have smart meters. I will, however, begin with 2 stories from New Mexico residents. Jennifer Andre was exposed to smart meters on Kirtland Air Force Base. She writes, quote, "I am a wife, mother, nurse, and veteran. Before my exposure to smart meter radiation, I was a very happy, healthy, active person, frequently traveling to see family and friends. For 3.5 months, when I went to bed at night, my head was situated approximately 1 foot away on the other side of a wall from an electrical panel containing 2 electric smart meters. That regular nightly smart meter radiation exposure the source of which I was unaware at the time, called me horrific and disabling symptoms: constant head and neck pain, dizziness, episodes of vertigo, brain fog, internal burning. Smart meter radiation exposure devastated my health. I could no longer tolerate living in an urban environment, so I have moved to South Dakota. Because of the harms I was exposed to, I am separated from my family. I have a nursing license, but can no longer work in my profession. Arlene Griffin is a Santa Fe resident who briefly lived in Southern California in 2019 to 2020, where they had a smart meter. She writes, I have no history of heart problems, but upon moving into a house in a development in San Diego County, I was jolted awake every night, feeling like what it would be like to be hit with defibrillator paddles. I also developed eye issues. My eyes burned and were red and swollen. We hired an inspector who tested our house for RF radiation and found the high readings were not coming from our property, but from our neighbor's house. It so happened that her smart meter directly faced our bedrooms. Finally, in September 2020, I returned to New Mexico for good, and I have not had those heart symptoms here.
Yeah.
This is why we want to keep New Mexico safe. Following stories are from outside of New Mexico. Marianne McCabe writes, quote, from the time the smart meter was turned on, I could not walk around in my apartment. I could not write an email. I could not think, and I could not sleep. It was an absolute nightmare until it was switched off. Jeannie Thompson writes, my mother died of a massive brain tumor caused by a row of 6 smart meters outside her condo on the wall where the head of her bed was. We discovered this after she had already passed. You can imagine my shock and horror. Mario De Sierra writes, back in 2017, my smart meter caught fire and nearly caught fire. Luckily, I was at home and intervened before anything worse happened. Persephone Maywald was diagnosed with suspected Parkinson's disease a few months after a smart meter was installed. Later, she had the smart meter replaced, and within a few weeks, all her symptoms disappeared. Simone St. Clair writes that since the smart meter was installed, there have been almost no hummingbirds at her feeders and a decrease in caterpillars in her garden. Deirdre Novella writes that her hair started falling out within a few months of a smart meter being installed at her place of work, that she was diagnosed with leukemia, and she developed a lifelong allergy to electricity. These are representative stories. Among many, many, many stories. Sheila Reville, who works as an electromagnetic radiation specialist, writes that after smart meters were installed, the smart meter signature I logged on to my radio frequency meter in my bedroom was at the precise times I wake up at night. She says that her next door neighbor and her neighbor's daughter wake at the exact same time, that her dog began having skin problems and would wake up whimpering at the exact same time, that she and her dog both wake up at the same time with diarrhea. Rebecca Randall writes that while she had a smart meter, she could not sleep and there were no birds, that when the smart meter was removed, the birds came back. Seema Kelly writes, my friend's neighbor had a smart meter put in. She did not know it had such dangers, but soon found out her chickens in the yard had huge tumors growing on their throats and body. The eggs they laid were odd shapes and colors, and the chickens appeared to be tired, which was not ever seen prior to the installation of the smart meters. Andre Fayol writes that a smart meter gave his family headaches, caused the animals, birds, and insects to disappear, and caused a fire that burned down his house. Margaretta Tierney became sick 2 weeks after a smart meter was installed and was sick for 5 years until she had it moved off her house. Sarah Wild writes that she had heart palpitations, headache, and panic until her smart meter was removed. Her 80-year-old neighbor went from being extremely lively, active, outgoing, to hobbling around and forgetful within 6 months of a smart meter being installed, and died within 18 months. Dino De Benetti writes that after a smart meter was installed, his wife's health and behavior deteriorated, resulting in their divorce. He writes that he has attempted to hatch fertile chicken eggs in an incubator in his house twice since the meter was installed, with over 20 fertile eggs each time and not one egg hatched either time. Karen Blomquist writes that when smart meters were installed on her home, she incurred inner ear damage, sleeplessness, anxiety, nonstop heart palpitations, migraines, fled her home after 2 months to save her life. She reports that her pets all got cancer and passed away. Tina Kata writes that although she opted out of a smart meter on her own home, on the day they were installed in her neighborhood, she, quote, "I walked outside and had no idea where I was. I had the worst kind of disorientation. This reaction was ongoing and lasted for the first few months." She reports vertigo attacks that have continued, constant dry mouth. Her teenage son has dry mouth, headaches, and sleep disruptions. Her neighbor's dog got cancer and died suddenly after the smart meters were installed. Her cat started acting differently, and all the bats around disappeared. Elizabeth Walsh knew nothing about smart.
Sorry, Arthur, I hate to cut you a little bit short. We're winding down on time. I have a few other questions.
Stories and stories and stories like this.
Right. You talked about you talked about
we have to stop smart meters in the United States, but first we have to keep them out of New Mexico. We stopped them.
Are there any major
and I would like everyone watching this program to please email the PRC and tell them that you are opposed to smart meters. The address to write to is prc.records@prc.nm.gov. That's prc.records@prc.nm.gov. In the subject line, write case number 22-00058-U, capital U, capital T. That's case number 22-00058-UT.
Okay, and we'll work to get a graphic up about that. You were talking about Kirtland Air Force Base. Are there any other institutions in New Mexico that are using smart meters right now, like hospitals or Los Alamos or whatever?
Los Alamos probably is not served by, if they're not served by PNM, they may have smart meters. The rural electrical co-ops in New Mexico all do have smart meters. They have smart meters, for example, up in Taos and in a lot of the rural areas.
Wow.
But PNM does not have it, and most of the major cities in New Mexico, therefore, do not have it.
How many other groups are you working with? Are you working with New Energy Economy and Common Ground Rising and the Southwest Environmental Law Center?
New Energy Economy, yes. The others, no, not yet.
Well, yeah, we need to be terribly involved in this. This is absolutely serious. I wonder if some of these figures about COVID brain fog are actually your EMF signals from the smart meters.
Well, actually, yes. Long COVID, especially. I have compared the list of symptoms of long COVID, and they are virtually identical with what the Soviet Union used to call radio wave sickness.
Wow. I know people used to think that, that half of the stuff was like conspiracy theories about HAARP and the Russians like hitting us with electromagnetic waves and stuff like that. But this is terribly serious. I read that the FCC says that these signals are as harmless as baby monitors, but and when I Google,
the FCC has no expertise, and they also have no authority to regulate radio frequency radiation.
This is crazy. When I Google this, I see a lot of people praising smart meters, but I don't see a whole bunch of people opposing this. Is there a national campaign that's working?
There's a national organization called Stop Smart Meters. That's should be stopsmartmeters.org. That's Joshua Hart in California has been monitoring this in the United States since probably a dozen years.
Well, as you can see, folks, Arthur is not even near a laptop and using his phone for this. That's how much he wants to stay away from these EMFs. And I know that we We need you on another program. This is a terribly important issue, and I'm sorry we're running out of time, but thank you very much for taking your time up in Santa Fe and your busy schedule to be on that Saturday show.
Thank you for having me on it.
All right. Have a very good day and stay safe. Hi, good morning. This is your host, Tom Dent. I'm here with Kathleen Burke to talk about fair redistricting in New Mexico. Kathleen and I have known each other for a while. We've worked on political issues. We've worked on police reform issues. We both served for at least over 2 years together on the Southeast Area Community Policing Council. As far as I know, since then, Kathleen has worked with the League of Women Voters and now with fair districting. Is it fair districting or fair redistricting of New Mexico?
It's fair districts for New Mexico.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us, Kathleen. And from what I've been studying from afar on this is, we've talked on other programs about protecting our vote nationally, gerrymandering, cross-check, all these voter intimidation issues. And I guess to make sure that this is a fair and equitable position, the first redistricting task force has been formed to make sure that different legislatures, different politicians don't use gerrymandering and redistricting tactics to ensure their own elections, to make sure that it's a free and fair election. Mm-hmm. And from what I see from the information you sent me, is that they're working to put an initiative on the 2024 ballot to ask the voters to approve an independent redistricting or districting commission. Is that right?
That's right.
All right. I will let you, and apparently Professor Gabe Sanchez from the University of New Mexico is a key person in helping to figure out this entire situation. And with that said, I'll just let you go off and explain to us exactly what's happening, Kathleen. And thanks again for showing up on that Saturday show.
Sure. Glad to be here, and you're welcome. And thanks for doing your research. Redistricting in New Mexico and the history of redistricting in New Mexico is a little bit complex and takes some study. We're not often exposed to the issues of redistricting because it only happens every 10 years in New Mexico. So the other 8 to 9 years, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. And that's why we're working so hard now to get fair redistricting in the state so that it's done in advance of the next redistricting session, which will be approximately 2031, 32. So we have a few years to get it right. But those few years move quickly in the world of legislation. And so we need to get it done now because it takes years to get a constitutional amendment to get passed through the legislature and then to actually go on the ballot for the people to vote, right? And so therefore, we're working on something now that will really take effect in another 8 to 9 years. But hopefully, if all goes well as planned, it will be 2024, just 1 year away, when we'll have fair redistricting as a constitutional amendment on the ballot. So you see, lots of advanced preparation. This is something that the League of Women Voters is very good at. A lot of experienced organizers and activists in that organization, and they've been working on this already for a number of years in New Mexico. I've been working for fair districts. I'm in my 4th year. Wow. So it's moving.
It sounds like this is very tied into the census and what information you can take from that. Are
Right.
there trouble spots in New Mexico? Is it hard to get proper information, say on the reservations, for example?
Well, yes, it's hard both to it's hard to collect census information in general in New Mexico. In all states, it's hard. It's a huge, arduous process. I'm sure that that most of us know that already. It becomes especially hard on the reservations. Communication difficulties, as you know, mail, email, electronic challenges, as well as, you know, distance, just the vastness of the land. So for census workers who are on foot, it's challenging. So right, redistricting is tied to the census outcomes. The data that comes in from the census helps to determine districts. What also determines districts? Well, that is where this gets pretty sticky, because this is where the legislature comes in. As it is now in New Mexico, our legislature comes together, typically behind closed doors, and decides what districts are going to look like, how the boundaries will change, what is the size, where are the border lines of one district to another. They have full reign to do that however they want. Now, this is a problem. It's technically a conflict of interest, because they are drawing their own districts, which are actually our districts. These districts, a district does not belong to a legislator. A district belongs to we the people, and we the people should be the ones determining what districts look like. What is their shape? Where do they end? Where do they begin? When we allow legislators to do that, what ends up happening is they do it to suit typically their own party, their own political party, and their own race. They're protecting their seat, right? Which is technically, again, our seat in which they are residing to serve us, we the people. So, conflict of interest. How do we resolve that? Well, we take it out of the hands of the legislature. That's the most direct route here. We take it out of their hands. We put it into the hands of an independent redistricting commission. This is the methodology that's working in other states. In the states that are more progressive on redistricting reform have instituted independent redistricting commissions. They've worked out the kinks by and large. They are and they're succeeding, not without trial and error, right?
I'm sure states like Florida and Texas aren't really keen on all this.
Right. Yeah, Florida and Texas do not have independent redistricting commissions. To a few examples of states that do have succeeding independent redistricting commissions would be Colorado, new, Michigan, and Arizona and California. Again, they have had troubles. They have had to work out kinks. Fortunately, we here in New Mexico can adopt what they have been through. We can learn from their mistakes and institute something much more rapidly and much more successfully.
Well, hopefully that's what we did with the legal marijuana legislation so far. It seems to be
Yes,
working out initially better than it had in original states like Washington and Colorado. I guess we've learned a lot from them.
great. Yeah, that's good. That's good to hear. We could use all the example setting we can get. Here in New Mexico, we don't have a lot of the resources, broad and deep resources that other states have. And so anytime we can get a break on instituting new things, hey, that's better.
So let me ask you this, just looking
Yeah.
at this generically, if you really want a nonpartisan commission for this, how would the data be looking at? Could fair districting be determined by quote unquote nonpartisan AI, for example, computer models, or what?
Well, computers do play into this quite a bit because data is now, we now have it all stored in computers and programs, things that come from the Census Bureau. We even have mapping software which has come from various universities. Let's see, Stanford has been very active in redistricting, as has Princeton. And they have developed software programs that help us determine actual fair districts. And they have done that for New Mexico too. So we can take one of these programs, plug in all of New Mexico population data, and it sends back maps of what is fair according to the population, according to communities of interest, a whole nother topic. That's how we keep people, rather than dividing up communities, which historically has been a tactic for disempowering certain races of people, certain communities of interest, right? So in New Mexico, we have a history of having seen that the Hispanic communities at times have been divided up. They divide them, it's called cracking. They crack their community, disperse their community among various districts, and therefore they have disempowered that community. That's happened both among Hispanic communities here in the South Valley of Albuquerque, and so going farther south in the state. In the northern part of the state, that's happened regarding the native populations, particularly the Navajo populations.
Yeah.
By the way, we have seen great, let's say, activism impact coming from both of those populations in New Mexico to help create fair redistricting here. More than ever, we have seen Native organizations, Hispanic organizations really rise up and have a say in this process.
Very good. I think, how many legislators are there in New Mexico? Like 300, 400?
Oh gosh, good question, Tom. I would have to count. I think it's closer to 200
200?
if we
Okay.
combine the House and the Senate.
Mhm. And just to remind our viewers, there's the big session, the 60-day session is coming up this January, in a couple of weeks, actually.
Right.
And the legislators don't just meet for these 2 months. I mean, they're teleconferencing, they come up for specific committees all the time. And I know, a lot of these districts are far flung and they're small, but just to talk like, let's say, a New Mexican who's not totally aware of how complex this is, I guess the first thing they'd look at is what recently happened with the congressional districts and how that altered the South Valley vote and all that. When was that decided?
When was, what aspect are you asking about? When was it
When
decided?
did they redraw the congressional districts for the last election?
So
Or
they were
prior,
drawn. I'm sorry?
or prior to the last election?
Right. So they were drawn in a special session, which was in December of 2021. So just over a year ago, the legislature met in special session pre-Christmas in the month of December, and they essentially hashed it out among themselves. And they that's done every 10 years again. Every 10 years they meet in special session. And they came back with they came out and announced what they decided were going to be the results. It was very contentious. We saw one senator leave his political party in the process. There were long arguments particularly on the Senate floor. And it was it was difficult for both them, the legislature, and for those who, like myself, who were watching it very closely. We need a better system.
Right.
That system is obviously not working.
It feels like we could talk for a very long time about this, but
Indeed.
as we're winding down, can you give us some websites, some numbers? What can we do as the public to help enhance this program? Are the websites we can go to? Do we need to put up the legislative hotline so people can contact their legislators or individual legislators, or what?
Great. Yes. Thanks for asking that question. So the best thing, those who can and will take some action on this issue, we'd be so happy. Contact your legislator. Contact both your representative from the New Mexico House of Representatives and contact your state senator. Tell them in brief. You can send them 1 or 2 sentences. Just ask them for their support of fair redistricting. If you can recall, maybe jot down a note here to ask them, tell them that we support an independent redistricting commission. That's what we're looking for, an independent redistricting commission. They will know, though. Your legislators, this will be coming across their desk. They will see this in committee. It will hit the floor in their chamber, and they will be voting. So again, to make this more concise, we're looking for a yes vote on redistricting reform in this session.
Okay, and where should they go to? The Secretary of State's webpage, or to the New Mexico Legislature webpage? Which, I guess if you pop in your zip code, they'll tell you exactly, or your address, they'll tell you exactly who your state senator, state rep is, and then there's a contact number right there. That's
right. That's at the New Mexico Legislature's website that Tom is referring to, and that's NMLegis, NMLEGIS.gov. I'm quite certain it's .gov. And there's a tab there in the upper left hand that will show you how to find your legislator. And then it lists their phone number, an email address for them. Feel free to call them. If you don't reach them, leave a message with their staff. They take careful track. They keep track of who's calling about what.
Well,
that's a great way.
I'm glad you highlighted that, because in this week and next week, I think what we're trying to do is to sort it through the TV program and maybe our newsletter at the Peace Center, trying to reconstruct our old legislative phone tree. So people in general, if you have particular issues that are coming up in this next 60-day session, so you can know what the issues are, you can know what the bill number is, use that number, contact senators and legislators. Like, we're talking about different police reform bills, we're talking about gun control bills, whatever, and I may get this wrong. I think in another program I called it the blue hydrogen, but it might be the blue helium.
Hydrogen.
Blue hydrogen that they're doing on the reservations and other places, which is basically fracking in reverse and trying to stop that. And you and I and Elaine Chimino, that we from Common Ground Rising, the anti-fracking group, has reminded me that there are people out there that are trying very hard to get the. I guess what's happening now is that we used to vote for public regulation commission members, and now new legislation has come up to where the governor can appoint these people and possibly, spearhead things like maybe she's pro fracking, pro blue hydrogen, whatever, and we've talked to Mariel Nanazi with New Energy Economy, working to stop Avangrid, the corrupt energy resources company from Spain, from taking over PNM. And this other issue that's coming up that involves PNM, I believe, primarily through the PRC, is installing smart meters on everybody's home, which a lot of people are worried that it emits radiation that can hurt the environment, that can hurt human beings, and that can put a lot of the meter readers out of a job.
Right. Right, Tom, great work. I mean, it's a lot to keep track of all these issues, and you're doing a great job there. Thank you. And by the way, the governor did just appoint the new PRC on Friday,
Oh boy.
and it appears to me that progressive voters are quite unhappy with the appointments, that they are shall we say, industry friendly.
Oh boy.
So there's been talk of perhaps revoking. Actually, we would have to have yet another constitutional amendment to remove the law that's been in place that allows the governor to appoint, and we would need to put that back into the hands of the people so that we elect our PRC commissioners rather than risk them being appointed by politicians who may or may not have interests in the industry, which we find ourselves having to defend ourselves from. Yeah.
Is there any other way to stop the smart meters rather than lawsuits, or do they have to wait the same amount of years before a constitutional amendment can be brought up?
Good question. No, we have to fight. The smart meter thing has to be fought now because the PNM has brought that to the PRC. They have applied for permission to install smart meters. They are already present in some areas of the state, but not here in Albuquerque, but in some limited areas. So we have to fight that now. The PRC is moving again for the third time to get smart meters on our houses and on our apartment buildings, et cetera. So yeah, it's been defeated twice. The PRC has said, no, you cannot do this. And now, isn't it, no coincidence, huh? We get a brand new appointed PRC, and right away, within weeks, they're asked to turn something around that has been determined twice already. So we have a battle to fight. It is still being fought, as I understand, by one organization, New Mexicans for Utility Safety, and others. So I understand you're going to be doing some interviews about this issue.
Right. We're going to try to get Arthur Furstenberg on here, if not this week, then next week. I know a little bit about the whole thing. I'm on one Facebook page, which is called EMF Warriors or something like that. And a lot of people will look at them and say, oh, well, they're halfway conspirators and 5G is not going to melt your brain or whatever. But we've got so many signals, electronic signals going on. And my friend Lloyd jokes that, it's the lead that's been in the water and in our environment that's starting to make humans dumber and dumber lately. But, maybe all these radio waves are helping, but I don't know. It doesn't sound good at all. I mean, my electrical meter is right next to my back porch, and we'll have people over there for parties and barbecues, and somebody might be sitting right next to it, having the thing emit rays right into their head. This does not sound cool.
Right, I agree. It doesn't sound cool, and Mr. Furstenberg will be able to talk to you a lot about that. He's a worldwide expert on that issue, so I'll let him address that with you.
Cool. Well, hopefully we can get a hold of him this week. I do want to thank Ian, and these issues are so important, and like you were hinting at before, we've already been through 4 years of a crazy mishmash in DC and people leading us around that, we don't know whether they're telling the truth or where they're coming from or whether they're actually looking out for the public interest or whatever. But, and we're probably all burned out from this. And it was so important to protect voter rights and democracy and females' health and reproductive rights in the last election. We're burned out from the last presidential election. Oh, we finally replaced this guy, and now we've done our duty in 2022, and probably taking a break and trying to relax. But remember, this doesn't end. This is one of these rare 2 years where we do have a 60-day session where you can work to get a lot of key legislation in public interest passed rather than financial information, which is what they basically center on during the 30-day session. So it's important to wake up again and to not go to sleep and pay attention to these very important issues for fair politics in New Mexico and for public health and in the public interest. So I really appreciate the work you're doing for the community and the state in your position. And thanks for coming on, Kathleen. Are you muted?
There we go. Thank
There
you.
you.
Great work you're doing. Construction going on outside. Had to put it on mute.